I know you're not delighted with this current government. Do you think a Labour government is now inevitable?
I think almost inevitable. I mean, it could be a government with a huge majority or maybe a government with a small majority that might have to work in some form of coalition. I think it's inconceivable that this government could get back with a majority to govern.
And you don't think we've got the historical precedent of John Major and his surprise victory in '92? You don't think that shares in Rishi Sunak are perhaps a little too low at the moment?
Not really. I mean, I think I've lived through failure after failure of Labour governments, disappointment after disappointment, election after election. So I know that that's what happens very often. Over 2/3 of my lifetime has been governed by Conservative governments. But I think this time it's impossible. The next 2 years, people's incomes are going to drop by 6%. And in the end, it's the economy, stupid. And people really will feel it in their pocket. This has never happened before.
You were constructively critical of New Labour, but you did describe them as the best government of your political lifetime. Does Starmer have to become Tony Blair to win?
I don't think anybody can be Tony Blair. Starmer is Starmer.
Has he got Blair's class?
I don't know what you mean.
His craft, just the X factor, as they say. Is he at the Tony Blair level, charisma, all the rest of it?
No, he's not. He's something quite different. He's very solid. He's a lawyer. He's run an important department as chief prosecutor. He has different kind of experience. I think he has less political experience. I think he's less agile politically. I think that's true. But on the other hand, people are getting a bit wary of the politically agile. And maybe being a solid citizen is a good thing. Yes,
with Sunak and Starmer, we're in a grey era of politics, aren't we?
Well, we've just been in such an exotic, upside-down, extraordinarily turbulent era. I don't think anybody's going to match up to Boris Johnson and Liz Truss. Perhaps it's more like the Theresa May era.
Possibly so. Now, Keir Starmer this weekend has told an interview, I think it was with The Times, that 99.9% of women don't have a penis. Will his hitherto difficulties in defining a woman be a factor at the next election, do you think?
I don't think very much so. I mean, I think the Conservatives are looking around for every single issue they can have which is not about the economy. You know, they'll look for any kind of wokery, any kind of trumped-up little something or another as a distraction, something to talk about, talking points. But in the end, what's going to cut is going to be public services and the money in people's pockets and the blow that they've had to their wages due to inflation. And although inflation will come down, they're still going to be paying out a lot more than they're getting in terms of wages. There's going to be a gap. So I think that's what really matters. I mean, as for the question about what's a woman, I think he said it very well. I think it makes sense. It's a small issue. You're not a transphobe for saying that. Stand up for the rights of trans people. But, most women are born women and don't have penises. But it doesn't mean that other people can't be women too if that's what they want to be.
Do you not share the views of politics professor at the University of Kent, Matthew Goodwin, who has suggested that these so-called culture wars could be a big factor, particularly in the red wall seats in the north of England, where voters might be Labour supporting by tradition, but are also socially conservative?
Well, what's interesting is the trans issue has no salience whatever. I mean, when Ipsos Mori does its regular what's the most important issue, it is just nowhere. I mean, you can stir people up for a bit, but when you stop and ask them, what do you really think about politics now? They think about the NHS, they think about social care, they think about schools, and they think about how their wages have fallen behind.
And what about the Channel migrant crisis? Do you think it was a mistake by Starmer not to at least include it in his top 5 priorities? Because there are those red wall constituencies that are concerned, aren't they, about illegal immigration in this country?
Oh, I think everybody all across the world and, places which have got much worse immigrant problems than we have.
Italy.
It is a real problem because a lot of people in the world are on the move because of climate, because
100
of
million
wars.
potentially.
Yes, and it's very alarming for every government. And, in that sense, we're lucky in this country that we've had many fewer than France, than Italy, than Germany, than Greece. So we make a huge fuss about it, but we should put it in some context that everybody is struggling with this, and we have a lesser problem, not a greater problem. You'd think, the way our newspapers talk about it on the right, that we were the worst in the world. It's just not the case. I think, controlling controlling your borders is a prime duty of any government, but it's really hard to do. It's like saying controlling crime is a prime duty. You can't promise, I'm going to have a crime-free government.
No, but do you not think Labour need to own it, given the fact that they need to win back the Red Wall? It is £6-7 million a day in hotel accommodation, 50,000 people at the moment in hotels. It's not sustainable, is it?
No, it's a real problem. I mean, you can't say it's not sustainable. Actually, we can absorb those people, but it's expensive, it's unpopular. People want to know who's coming in and they want to choose who comes in, which is very reasonable. But it doesn't mean on an island like this that you can necessarily protect every inch of your shores all the time against people arriving in boats. It is a real problem. And I think Labour's right to say the government's made an awful mess of it. I mean, what are they doing not processing people for 1, 2, 3 years? We need to process them. We need to get them jobs. They want to work, and we have loads of jobs. It's absolutely mad to keep people in hotels when they could be working, you know, living their own lives. I mean, if we haven't got a way of sending them back, and I don't think Rwanda's going to work, even if they send a few there, it is not going to solve the whole problem. We've got to find a way of letting them work when we need them.
And speaking of work, you flirted with politics. You stood for the SDP in 1983. I think you came third, which is decent. Was it East Lewisham?
East Lewisham. I got exactly the same as everybody got in the SDP right across London.
That was about 10,000 votes or something. Is that the career that got away?
No, it's not. I mean, I was neither better nor worse. The thing is that individuals make awfully little difference. MPs like to imagine that they're being chosen personally, but you're not. And the SDP didn't manage to make that great breakthrough in 1983 that it looked as if it might have done when we had Thatcher on one side, very unpopular until the Falklands War. Michael Foot on the other side, very unpopular on the far left. And there really seemed to be a need for something in the middle. But under our electoral system, in the end, people vote against the person they fear most. They either feared Thatcher or they feared Michael Foot most, and they didn't dare vote for something else. And until we have a proportional representation system, it's the fate of any, you know, your Nigel Farage, who stood,
he
8 times and
Yeah.
never gets through. It's impossible.
Do you think if Starmer achieves, briefly if you can, an overall majority, that he should introduce legislation for PR?
I wish he would. I don't think he's
Turkeys
planning to.
don't vote for Christmas, right? If he gets a majority, then that disproves the argument.
I don't just think it's that. I think it's because it would take an awful lot of time, and he's got a lot of things to do. And these great big constitutional questions just absorb too much political energy.
I suspect I agree with you. We're probably a couple of hung parliaments away from that becoming a reality. But